Iron Monkey presents The Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Episode 3. Monsters Are Real. Today's letter is from Lester Billington, addressed to Hugh Billington, Syracuse, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Letter 1. Friday, June 2nd, 6:15 a.m. Good morning, Hugh. After 2 nights of sound sleep and a full day to recuperate, I feel stronger, though I have become quite bored with staring at the ceiling. My mind is still spinning with thoughts of my mysterious island expedition. I witnessed a 2-headed pig, a slumbering carnival, a shrieking carny, a subterranean beast, towering stone pillars, enchanted woods, and of course, I became my own doppelganger. The one thing that did not disturb me was the beautiful singing I heard somewhere in the fairgrounds. Though the serenade was brief, I feel compelled to hear it once again. I plan to trek out shortly in search of the source of that stunning voice. Who knows? Perhaps my next letter will include the announcement of my betrothal to a wealthy and beautiful opera star. Les. Letter 2. Saturday, June 3rd, 9:30 a.m. Dearest brother, monsters are real. Today was a day like no other. I returned from this morning's journey with even more questions, and thankfully, with my life. Once again, I headed out early. The weather was bright and beautiful. I knew it would be a hot day, for the cicadas were already singing. I was determined to investigate the carnival fairgrounds further. Last time, I only got a glimpse before getting run off by that profane carnival fellow. This time, I kept to the path next to the train tracks and walked past the carnival instead of venturing into it. I followed the tracks until I came upon a few interesting train cars. The first few had empty flatbeds carrying what looked to be equipment and the like. Next to the cars was a line of circus wagons adorned with sideshow banners promoting attractions and oddities. As I approached the entrance to this area, I was presented with a large banner that read, "Professor Kane's Human Zoo. Enter if you dare." I dared to enter and walked alongside the empty wagons. Among the bright and eye-catching banners were Luna, the Moonlit Mermaid, Scary Sally, the Masked Monstrosity, and Lilith, the Muse of the Macabre. Next, I came to a wagon whose sign read, "The Bone Collector, Keeper of the Crypts." This one was unique, as it was enclosed by heavy metal bars, like an animal cage. A canvas tarp hung just inside the bars, obscuring what was behind it. Posts holding a metal chain acted as a fence, keeping viewers several feet away from the wagon. Smaller signs expressing "danger" and "keep back" hung upon the chains. I've been to sideshows in the past, and these type of attractions usually reveal some sort of farce after you've paid a premium to view it. I recall one in Atlantic City that promised the world's largest rat, "Stay back, for he's a man-eater." I paid my admission and was granted access to view this monster. I entered warily and peered at the beast, which turned out to be nothing more than an overgrown grass-eating Australian guinea pig. It was quite the spectacle for those unaware of such peaceful beasts. I, on the other hand, was already familiar, and the sight gave me a quiet chuckle. It was all in good fun, and arguably worth the price of admission. I expected the contents of the Bone Collector's wagon to contain a similar farce, but I hesitated to approach it. For one, it had an odor that became almost unbearable as I stepped across the chain fence. It had the stench of death, like meat left for weeks in a thawed icebox. It was pungent and acidic, so strong it burned my eyes. I covered my nose and mouth to avoid taking in any more of the foulness into my lungs. I thought perhaps an animal had died in the cage and was rotting away in the shadows. My curiosity moved me to look and see what lay behind the tarp, even for a second or two. I fully expected to see a pig or maybe a mangy coyote consumed by maggots. I reached between the bars and lightly grabbed an edge of the canvas tarp. Immediately, thousands of flies exploded to life and swarmed about me in the wagon. I frantically brushed them away with my free hand. After composing myself, I began to pull the tarp back very slowly when something stirred inside the cage, enough to rock the wagon on its axles. Several crows perched atop the wagon, squawked, and fluttered their wings in a frantic flight. It startled me, and I hopped back, withdrawing my hand from the cage. This left a gap which allowed me to see into the dark wagon. I waved my hand back and forth in an attempt to scatter the cloud of flies. I leaned in, trying to see what lay in the darkness. As my eyes adjusted, I thought I made out a figure towards the back of the cage. I couldn't discern any features, but I thought it might be a man sitting there, motionless. And then it became apparent it was making a sound, a low, guttural, and malevolent thrumming, as if the very air itself was vibrating with the sinister energy of the creature. I then started to doubt it was human. It appeared to be moving, but I don't mean its location. I'm seeing its skin was undulating, changing shape. I couldn't see it clearly, but it was almost like it was covered, and I mean completely covered, with hundreds, perhaps thousands of small things. My imagination told me they were hairless mice, or else large, pale roaches. An abhorrent skittering sound brought the nightmare to life, and I froze. I adjusted my position to better see the dark figure in the shadows. It took me a moment to realize I was staring into its eyes as they stared back into mine. Its eyes were massive and shockingly a blazing yellow. I froze, not knowing what to do next. We seemed to be locked in some sort of hypnotic staring contest. Then, the trance was broken by the sound of shattering glass just beyond the wagon. The all-too-familiar screams of profanity followed immediately after. After the initial shock, I peered around the wagon to see the same carny from my previous excursion. Today, he was accompanied by another man, apparently a subordinate, who frantically tried to gather what he had dropped. At this point, I was hit with the familiar aroma of beer wafting past me. It seemed they were unloading crates of beer and other spirits out of a train car when one dropped to the ground. Now, I know it isn't exactly impossible to get booze during these prohibitive times, but it appeared they had an entire train car full. If my deductions are correct, it seems whoever runs this carnival has a pretty profitable and diabolical scheme going on. Imagine that, a thriving island speakeasy under the guise of a benevolent hospital for the contagious. Grateful to be unnoticed by the Vulgarian and his assistant, I slowly crept back around the wagon. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I focused on the tarp and watched it being slowly pulled back. Just before it retracted into the darkness, I made out a shape, a gaunt, skeletal hand with filthy, elongated nails. This produced quite a shudder and sinking unease. Whatever was lurking in the shadows was not only horrific, but intelligent and dexterous enough to ensure its privacy. I happily put some space between me and the sideshow. Making my way towards some innocent-looking carnival rides, I strolled among them, wishing I might have a chance to ride a few. A couple of workers, leisurely chatting and oiling parts, bid me a good morning. Others simply took no notice of me, which was surprising, as I clearly stood out in my pajamas and slippers. This indeed improved my mood and gave me the courage to investigate further. I walked through the fairgrounds and entered the midway. I passed the big top, which honestly wasn't that big, and then came upon another tent that appeared to be a dance hall. I felt like a wealthy baron strolling through his private carnival grounds. Just then, I heard that familiar sound of a woman singing. It was that wonderful, mellifluous voice I heard only a couple days before. I just had to see her, if only to compliment her talent. I was pulled like a magnet toward the sonorous melody. drifting into a small tent city before I snapped out of it. Once again, I heard that ignoramus carny fellow coming my way, barking orders as he stomped his way toward me. This blowhard seems to be waiting for me around every corner. In a panic, I dashed into the tent city and peered into one of the small tents. Seeing no one, I ventured in. The tent was dark, so I stood and waited for my eyes to adjust. It was surprisingly quiet. Besides the sound of a lone cicada in the distance, only men's muffled conversation could be heard. I decided to wait until they moved along. I took a few deep breaths to settle myself. The tent's interior was simple, yet quite genteel. A single cot occupied the corner, flanked by two small stands fashioned from wooden crates. A small stool stood before a vanity that held a gentleman's toiletries. An impressive carved chess set mid-game rested on a small table between two folding chairs. Upon closer inspection, I observed that the queen was in imminent peril of being captured. Feeling a bit cheeky, I captured her with the opposing knight. My intention was not to spoil their game, but to inject a touch of mystery into someone else's day. I pocketed the queen, pondering where to discreetly place her. Suddenly, the cicadas swelled to a deafening chorus. Just as I took note of this, a shadow fell across the floor, darkening the ground before me. I turned to see the outline of a figure in the doorway. Only a silhouette was discernible as the sun set behind it. It appeared to be a very tall and slender man in a sleeveless cloak, standing outside the tent, facing me. He was so tall that I could not see above his chest. He crouched down to enter the tent. I started to mutter something, but confusion robbed me of speech. Time itself seemed to stop as I struggled to comprehend what happened next. As he crouched down, a horrific metamorphosis occurred. 2 additional legs sprouted grotesquely from its torso, quivering and crackling as they groped for the ground. Then, in a spine-chilling contortion, it hunched forward, its hands reaching for the floor. But these limbs also replicated, giving birth to 2 additional arms. Now, sprawled on the ground, it assumed the form of a nightmarish, colossal spider, 8 grotesque limbs writhing beneath it. I froze in terror. My heart was racing as though it would pound out of my chest. I attempted to scream or call out, but my voice failed me. All that escaped was a pathetic, muffled weep. It began to creep towards me, ever so slowly at first. It moved with an unnerving deliberateness, its legs shifting and falling in a methodical sequence, like a grotesque marionette on strings. As it was blocking the only exit, I panicked, turned, and tried to get out by any means possible. I tore at the canvas tent like a frantic, clawless cat, but to no avail. All at once, it raced towards me with lightning speed, unleashing an unholy chorus of grotesque skittering. The creature appeared rather hairless, its oily skin glistening, now only inches from me. In a blink of an eye, it reached for me. Bony yet powerful hands grabbed my wrists and immobilized me. Its 2 additional hands grabbed me around my throat. Its long, spindly fingers wrapped almost completely around my neck, pinning me to the tent wall. I've never felt so vulnerable in my life. The room around me seemed to blur and distort, the walls closing in, the ceiling descending. It paused, holding me in its foul, extended arms. It seemed that it was examining me, but then, ever so slowly, it pulled me closer and closer until I was face to face with this abomination. I used every bit of strength I had to break away, but it was absolutely futile. I let out an ear-piercing bellow as I tried to turn my head, but its grip was like a cold, unyielding vice. At this point, I succumbed, and tears poured down my cheeks. It then became clear that its head was covered by a crude sack. The only detail I could make out was the texture of the cloth, I think burlap, with 2 crude holes cut for eyes, each a black abyss. Behind the sack, a haunting, raspy breath clawed at my ears. It then began to rise up. As it stood tall, it held me at its chest height, then paused. I couldn't move. I may have been lifted off the ground, but I honestly don't recall. At that point, a horrific vision came into view. Within the opening of its cloak, an aberration was revealed. My eyes focused, and I realized I was staring at some type of face, a malformed and grotesque face seemingly upon its chest. Yes, you heard me right. A hairless head somehow sprung forth from the chest of this being. Its eyes, hollow, soulless and white, darted here and there as though searching for something distant. The nose was barely formed, merely two black holes over a gaping mouth that contained a few brown and crooked teeth. I slammed my eyes shut as it drew me closer. I know it sounds odd, but I thought if I shut my eyes as hard as I could, I would pass out or wake up from a nightmare. Either way, it was an attempt to escape this horrid experience. Just then, I felt something touch my cheek. I didn't want to look, but I involuntarily opened my eyes and saw that wretched face up close, eyes closed, but mouth wide open as it licked the tears off my cheek with its foul tongue, dry and textured with tiny barbs like a cat's. That's when the stench hit me. Its rancid breath reeked of disease like a rotting corpse. I retched. My stomach was empty, so only dry heaves poured forth. I began to hyperventilate, my vision closing at the edges. I was seconds from fainting before the beast let go of my hands, then thrust me back and onto the floor. I lay there, gasping for air while continuing to heave, finally spewing forth what little liquid remained in me as I lay there, sobbing in a fetal position. Then everything went dark. I remember only the clatter of cicadas encircling me like a swarm before I lost consciousness. At some point, I awoke lying on my back and drenched in sweat. A cool, damp rag covered my eyes and forehead, providing a temporary oasis from the terror I had endured. I took a deep breath and basked in the coolness of the cloth for a moment, grateful to be back in the hospital ward. I lifted the rag and froze. I was still in the very same tent of my horrific encounter. I lurched upright, woozy yet alert. To my relief, the creature was gone. I dashed to the exit and peered out. Nothing. I made a break for the woods. Somehow, I managed to run, and I ran until my chest burned like fire. I had the feeling I was being chased, and I swore something was at my back, chomping at me. But it was only my paranoia. I made it back to the hospital uneventfully. I've never been so happy to return to this cold and sterile facility. The nurses were quite shocked to see me. I was filthy, and my clothes were soaked with sweat. I got their full attention as they assumed my affliction had relapsed. It seemed like forever until I caught my breath. I can't tell you how relieved I was to be in the care of these sweet angels. After some poking and prodding and administering of medicines, I finally fell fast asleep, slumbering through the entire night, not even stirring from the sound of the late-night wailers. I don't feel like I can confide in anyone yet about my encounter, though I feel desperate for another to witness it. Once I gather my nerve, I'll resume my investigations, and of course, I will let you know what I find. Until then, I think I'll keep a low profile and relax within these cold, yet reassuring industrial walls. Your loving brother, Lester. One final matter. As I changed out of my soiled clothes, I found a chess piece tucked in my pocket and withdrew it, only to discover it was not the white queen, but a black king. Bewildered, I reached back into my pocket and retrieved a folded note. It read, "You took my queen, but the game was never yours to win." Checkmate. The Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Produced and distributed by Iron Monkey. To share your reflections, lend your aid, or explore the mysteries of the Lazaretto Letters, visit Iron Monkey at enterthemonkey.com. Thank you for listening.